Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast. It's Tom Dienhart and myself, Brian, on assignment this weekend in North Carolina, South Carolina, doing some basketball as well. I want to thank our sponsors, and that's the Union Club Hotel and the 811 Bistro. Victoria Wicks and the whole company have done a great job. We've enjoyed our partnership and looking forward, hopefully, to a third year with them here upcoming. But Tom, never a dull moment this summer. It's been crazy. Obviously, just a whole new, the three words, brave new world, seem to be the storyline about every other week. And even as we record this, it could change, in terms of that. Let's start with the collectives. You obviously talked to Jeff McKean from the Boilermaker Alliance as they are trying to put some things together. It seems to be a work in progress, but just your sense on talking to Jeff and what may transpire and what they're trying to hopefully trying to get done from their perspective.
Well, they're still setting everything up right now. They launched a website recently. They're not able to take donations just yet over the website, but yeah, they just want to get in the game, and they think they have at least a good collection of people helping them get everything off the ground with the Boilermaker Alliance. Jeff's a co-founder. He's a class of 1986. He's from Kokomo, Sigma Chi. He told me, I guess, a pledge brother of Jim Everett's. So that's a Sigma Chi fraternity that's produced a lot of luminaries, if you will.
Yeah. Jeff
loves Purdue, obviously, and yeah, smart guy, a lawyer in the Indianapolis area, and seems like the kind of guy you'd want steering this ship, but everything's still sort of in its infancy. Expect the website, I'm told, to be built out a little more extensively. I think he said in August. And yeah, just exciting times. And again, it's going to be, he told me to really think of it as maybe not as a collective, but more of as a charitable endeavor. And yeah, again, a lot of the machinations and I's have to be dotted and T's crossed. But again, it's a collective, I think, that can enhance Purdue's effort to stay in this ever expanding and ever moving quickly NIL game that's defining college athletics.
Yeah, no question. And I know known Jeff over the years, and a guy that, like you said, very much of a Purdue guy, very much of a guy that, and obviously it's going to take a lot more than that. And very much, my discussions with him, we get the sense that, we being the Boilermaker Alliance, there's a lot of moving parts to this. They spent a lot of time from my discussions, and certainly in your interview with him, trying to work with Purdue from a compliance standpoint, making sure that this is done the quote unquote Purdue way, whatever that is, but also trying to find that charity angle, and that's going to be an interesting storyline that IU and some others have done this, and yet I don't know that it's certainly not all flushed out, and may not be for a little bit of time.
Yeah, Jeff wants the bulk of these funds that are donated to go to the student athletes.
Yeah,
I think he told me he estimated maybe 15% would have to go to administrative fees and whatnot. So they're very cognizant of that. They're not in this to make money. Obviously, they want to be able to enhance Purdue athletics. And he told me too, they're in the process of applying to be a tax exempt entity as well, that 401c, I think, with the IRS code. So I don't know all the actual ways how it works, Alan. But again, as you said, the Purdue way, I think the Purdue way is being methodical and being meticulous and making sure you have everything buttoned up. Like you said, they're working with the university. Don't want to get anybody in any trouble. And again, Alan, the thing we've seen with these quote unquote collectives, these NILs, is they're not really being employed or used as their intent was meant to be. We've seen that, liberal application applied at some schools like Miami of Florida in particular. It's not supposed to be an inducement to get a player to come to your institution. The NIL mechanisms, the collectives are in place to, enhance or supplement the student athlete's experience when they're on campus. And Purdue's not going to use this as a means to induce recruits. They're not going to get in bidding wars with guys before they've ever made a commitment to a school. That's, I think, part of the Purdue way as well. So, again, it's like everything else in life, Alan. Whenever there's change, whenever there's something new, it's exciting as heck, but it's also scary too. And we're seeing all this still develop before our very eyes. And we've talked a lot, seems like in recent months, every week about as big of a story as this is. I mean, the landscape of college sports is dotted with what it seems like screaming headlines. When you talk about conference realignment now becoming a big thing as well, and what we've seen with the transfer portal too. It's just a crazy time in college sports.
I think to Jeff, and it does bear the discussion, how in the world, you're right, it isn't going to, Purdue doesn't want to use it as an inducement, but it's kind of the chicken or the egg. You got to have it, you would think, to attract guys. You got to have it in place. And this is and Jeff obviously is being an Indianapolis area guy. There's always been a big network with the Boiler Business Exchange down there. There's separate there. You bring in things like the John Purdue Club, how all this works together with raising money, because you got to raise the money from somebody, from donors, from boosters. All those things really make for can make your head explode if you're in the college football realm, in terms of how this all comes to pass in the next period of time. And maybe that's just, you've been saying this all along, and you're really right. You got to accept change, and it is what it's going to be. And if Purdue wants to stay in the game, they've got to play in this game. And Jeff McKean has said that. You've said that on down the line.
Does no good to shake your fist at the clouds and wish it was 1973. As much as I'd like to sometimes, Alan, but you got to move forward. Some people can't wrap their head around these kids getting money when they get to school for playing athletics. You got to let it go. If you don't, you're going to return to the Darrell Hazel days, and you gotta get this up and running. And thank goodness Purdue has a guy like Jeff McKean in his group to get this formed. I asked Jeff too, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel, right?
Right.
Did he look at any other existing collectives that have been established within the last year? And he says, yeah, they have. Ohio State had a couple that really impressed him. One was called the Cohesion Foundation. Another was just called the Foundation. He said Clemson had a collective that they liked called Tiger Impact. And Alan, he even thought what Indiana's doing is good, as much as that may make listeners of the podcast want to punch their screen. But the Hoosiers for Good, which is also set up like a charity. So again, you want to steal good ideas when you see them implemented by other people, right? There's no great revelation in that. So again, these are smart guys. They're a heck of a lot smarter than me, Alan. And you got to trust they're going to get this right. And you talked for a minute there about competing donation dollars. You got your John Purdue Club, long established John Purdue Club. We all know what its marching orders are. Among them, funding scholarships and, of course, facilities. And now we've got this collective, right? The Boilermaker Alliance, this new entity that's going to have money fueled into it every year to help, reward students when they're on campus. Alan, when these guys get here, the top players are going to want something.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not kid ourselves. And some of this has been going on for years anyway. I'm not saying at Purdue, but across the nation. And you got to be able to take care of these guys. Would Rondale Moore stayed at Purdue if there was no collective, if there was one in place during his playing days? How about George Karlaftis? How about David Bell? I guess my point is, you can get all the 3-star talent you want. You can still get a lot of good players who are 3-star players. But again, man, everybody watch this knows sports. You got to have a few difference makers. And to keep difference makers happy, you got to do. You got to keep them happy. And I'm just going to say that. You got to keep difference makers happy. Difference makers win football games for you. Difference makers win basketball games for you. Every team, you can look at the depth chart and circle 2 or 3 guys. See, these are the guys that can beat us. You got to be able to get those guys to keep them on campus. And it's going to just get more and more competitive. The Big Ten, we haven't talked about expansion yet. It's going to get tougher and tougher. If you want to compete and stay relevant, at every level of the sport, Alan, from your kids who are in youth sports all the way to the pro sports, man, the guys with the best players usually win the ball games, and having a good, strong collective is going to help you maintain a talented roster.
I thought one thing in my one conversation I had with Jeff that earlier on was the fact that he said, Purdue fans, he said 75% of them initially, and some people on our message boards would say, had struggled with embracing this notion. He said, but that he believes that number is changing. And once you kind of flush it out, look at it, the landscape, the way it is, look at it with respect to reality, you can put your arms around it. And I think it's kind of been your message as well. We're not going back. That part is it. But how we deal with this and how this all works and how they, I know one thing that Jeff talked about also was trying to get, we want to take care of all programs. Can we do that? I don't know. And that's going to be an interesting storyline to watch. And it's not all going to be decided by August 1st. We know that. It's going to be a work in progress. I think what they say, talk about hiring 4 full-time people as part of this as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to take some administrative effort. Jeff McKean's day job as an attorney. He has his own law firm in Indianapolis. I know for a fact it's taken a lot of his time initially. It's a labor of love, but as we all know about labors of love, you want to be able to have a good ending at the end if you can do it, and that's going to be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, he told me this is something you can't work off the side of your desk.
Yeah,
you need to have a staff dedicated to this, and yeah, I think that was a number he gave me, Alan, was as many as 4. Maybe not 4, but as many as 4 here. And I do believe, Alan, Purdue has hired their director of NIL engagement.
Yes.
Not sure who that person is, but I'm pretty sure that person's been hired. And of course, that's a position that was created this summer or maybe late spring in concert with that organization called the Aspire Group that works with Purdue on a couple of different levels. So that person will actually be an Aspire employee. But I don't want to get too deep in the woods on that. So again, Purdue also has in place, Alan, of course, the Boilermaker Marketplace, which is run by the university. It's a website anybody can go to. It's a place where businesses can connect with student athletes. They want to approach them about an NIL opportunity. So that's another NIL, I guess, mechanism for Purdue student athletes to be able to take advantage of as well. And who knows, Al, maybe there'll be some more coming up. I saw recently where the Iowa football players established their own. I think they're going to take 2,000 people at about $200 a year, and they've got a whole, just kind of like a fan club, a laundry list of things you can do to actually interact with the players. Pretty cool idea, pretty simple. I think that they're going to spread among the teammates. So again, maybe we're just scratching the surface. I mean, I was told early on, maybe one day, Alan, there's going to be a collective for every sport. There'll be a football collective just dedicated to football, one dedicated to basketball, and whatever other sport may be on your campus really merit having their own. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this develops over time.
Yeah, no question. And you look at all the folks that it takes to even run recruiting and just the regular recruiting side of things. All this, you're going to have another layer of complexity, but necessity when you talk about NIL. Okay, now we're going to pivot to the next topic, and you've talked to a lot of guys, talked about how on the site this week about how some Big Ten coaches were blindsided, or we all were shocked, I guess, when we started recording last week's Saturday Simulcast about USC and UCLA. And then you followed up with some of those guys. Surprising news, but give me your crystal ball. And this is an impossible question to answer, but where do we sit 2 weeks from now? Do you think more is going to pop? We know that these agreements aren't going to start, at least with the USC and UCLA, the 2024 season. But when is this still as active as it appears to be on social media?
I don't think so, Alan. I think we're done for now. I think we're finished. Stories to be continued. I think one of the first things that really has to be settled, I think, is what is the playoff going to look like moving forward? And that's probably not going to be decided, I think, till 2026, when this current 4-team configuration expires. So I think you have to get an idea what the future of your sport looks like from a playoff standpoint before you're maybe really making some other radical changes. But I think, having said that, Alan, the one move that could take place in the next year or two that could accelerate and kick off a whole nother round of movement is Notre Dame.
Yeah.
That's the one domino that everybody's sort of waiting on. They're all looking at Notre Dame. Nobody's going to make a move, I don't think, till Notre Dame makes a decision. If Notre Dame, Alan, joins the Big Ten, I think that could trigger just a massive cataclysmic sort of an event that we see maybe totally end the Pac-12 as we know it. You probably read a lot of the same scenarios I have. If Notre Dame goes to Big Ten, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if then you see I could see the Big Ten taking Stanford for a lot of different reasons. And then
Oregon, maybe?
No, I'm not sure. I think Oregon or Washington. Then I think you'd see the Pac-12 probably go away. I think you'd see the Utah, Colorado, Arizona State go to the Big 12, and possibly Oregon and Washington too. I think you see all those teams go to the Big 12. Washington State, Oregon State, schools that add Cal may have to go to the Mountain West with Wyoming and Colorado State and Nevada and schools like that. I don't think the Big Ten wants Oregon and Washington, Alan. From everything you read, everything you hear, they just don't move the needle enough financially. Yeah, they're big. Oregon's a big popular brand. We get it. We all know about Phil Knight, but there's the TV footprint up there is not that big in Oregon. It's bigger in Seattle, but I still don't think either of those schools is really the juice isn't worth the squeeze to add them. They're not going to make the pot big enough to justify bringing them in. Again, if they can somehow, the ACC, Alan, they've got that grant and rights that goes to 2036, which is very prohibitive. Any schools can get out of that, from under that, who knows? But let's say they can, Alan. I think then if I'm the Big Ten, I would look at trying to get North Carolina and Virginia. I think if the Big Ten could get North Carolina, Virginia, Stanford, and Notre Dame, that gets you to 20 schools, 20 great academic schools too, Alan. And I think that matters for the Big Ten. And some brands in Notre Dame and North Carolina in particular that are monster brands as well. And Stanford, Alan, I think the Big Ten presidents would get off having Stanford, being able to brag that they got Stanford in the Big Ten. I think Notre Dame would like to have Stanford in the Big Ten too. It's a team they play a lot,
right?
Mine on a lot of different fronts. Well, again, Stanford's a small school, small private school. It's not going to move the needle a lot of ways TV, but I just think the pride and the ego burst the Big Ten would get by having Stanford as part of its conference would be huge. Virginia, another great institution. North Carolina is a great academic institution too. Notre Dame's Notre Dame. I think that SEC would just be crestfallen if the Big Ten gets Notre Dame. So again, for now, Alan, I don't think anything's going to happen big time wise at all. There's talk of maybe a little TV agreement between the ACC and the Pac-12. That's just a TV agreement. It involves no conference mergers or anything like that. That's the hottest thing going right now. But again, I don't anticipate seeing any other changes for maybe a year or two at the earliest. I could be wrong, but that's sort of the read I get.
Well, it's funny because you've got enough Twitter followers that if you would just tweet something, because obviously there was something on Friday morning about, and I didn't even look at the source, about Carolina and Virginia going to the SEC, and again, all these things may not be worth the digital paper that they're not printed on.
They got that grant and rights till 2036 with ESPN. ESPN, it's a sweetheart deal for ESPN. They're not going to let anybody get out from under that. So again, I know there's lawyers in the world for a reason. I know if you write a big enough check, you can get anything you want typically in life. So there's always a possibility, but that's the big hurdle there with the ACC, Alan. 2036. Yeah, long way that my son's going to be 36 years old. I'll probably dead, Alan.
No, you won't be. You're going to be thriving by then.
Can they get out from underneath that? I mean, it's crazy. 2036, and maybe they can, because I'm sure Clemson, Florida State, and Miami would love to go to the SEC. And again, if something like that happens, the ACC is gone, right? And then you're looking at schools like Pitt, Syracuse, NC State, Wake Forest, and Duke. Are they Conference USA schools? I don't know. But again, the ACC and that grant rights through 2036 is a huge hurdle. The Pac-12 is more nimble because their contract is up in a couple of years, and the Big 12 is up too. So it's going to be fascinating to see how all these chess pieces get sorted out.
I just hope it doesn't change before Saturday morning.
I don't think it's not going to.
Yeah,
right
well,
now.
one thing it also
I'm anticipating.
yeah, well, yeah. One thing that's interesting also is that in Washington and Oregon, the state legislators they forced by law. Now, whether that can change, and again, I think anything can change, but Washington State's supposed to be in the same conference. Oregon State are supposed to be. Who knows? In other words, that would prohibit them from jumping.
I don't see it. I can't believe Washington and Oregon let themselves go down to irrelevance just to say tethered to their two lesser brothers. We've seen. I remember they were making the same pronouncements in Oklahoma a few years ago with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Yep.
Now we've seen Oklahoma divorce itself from Oklahoma State. Washington, I love Washington State. I really love Oregon State. But those schools are probably Mountain West schools, Al, and they probably should be playing Colorado State, in Wyoming, in Boise State, and those type of schools. Again, Washington, Oregon, they can't let themselves be held back by some state legislator who thinks they need to be tethered together and be in the same league. It's just ludicrous.
Yeah. We'll see what shakes out. All right. What other news? There is actual Purdue football news. Obviously, a lot of recruiting still going on, but Neil Callaway also the return to Joe Tiller, to Jeff Brohm's staff. I am back in 2007, but tell us a little bit about just your gut feeling about that and his return and what he means and what he meant when he was here before.
Yeah, Jeff Brohm's got those two analyst spots, Alan, offensive analyst and defensive analyst. And he wants to make sure they're worthwhile. He hires worthwhile people. These positions, you're limited on what you can do from an on-the-field coaching standpoint.
Right.
But you can still have a great impact. And Neil Callaway, if people remember, first came to Purdue in 2020 in a similar role, off-the-field role. Then last year, he was made an on-field assistant offensive line coach. And then he retired after last season. And then he subsequently took a job in the USFL, coaching the Michigan Panthers offensive line. And I'm told that was a marriage of convenience. And Neil lives in Birmingham, Alabama, and that's where all the USFL games are played this year, in Birmingham, Alabama. So it was easy for him to do it. And now for Jeff Brohm to get him back in an analyst role, I think is good. I mean, his resume speaks for itself. He can help with the offensive line. I know Jeff Brohm likes having, as much help with that offensive line as he can. He really liked having Neil last year full time. He loved
no doubt
line coaches. So it's a good hire. I think before Alan, Neil was still going to be like a consultant, if you will, but now this is obviously more of a full-time position. And expect Purdue to hire, of course, a defensive analyst. That's probably going to happen in the next week or two, and help really fill out that staff. Of course, Big Ten Media Day. What I want to say, let me get my calendar out real quick. A couple weeks away, July 27th is Purdue's Day. That's a Wednesday. The first day of Big Ten Media Day is 26th. It's a 2-day event. 7 schools each day, and Purdue's on the 27th. So that's coming up too. Training camp's supposed to start August 2nd. First game is September 1st. And now from a recruiting standpoint, boy, it's been a flurry, hasn't it? 18 commits, some good commitments, Alan. There's 2 guys still out there. Kendrick Gilbert, defensive tackle, Cathedral High School, 4-star commit. Came out this top 4 recently. Purdue's in it. But I'm told Kentucky's probably the leader. So that's who Purdue's trying to beat. We could see a decision made soon by Kendrick Gilbert. Purdue's in this, Allen. He'd be a great pickup to a group of defensive linemen that's already very impressive. Mark Hagan's done a great job. So again, Kentucky's probably the leader. Purdue has a chance. Expect a commitment soon from Kendrick Gilbert. And the other one's Cole Dellinger, an offensive lineman from Michigan, who Purdue's had on a visit. I think he's a lot more of a long shot, Allen. He's probably going to go to Michigan State, I'm told. So those are the 2 guys that fans should should sort of keep on their radar that really Purdue has offers out to that have visited that they could conceivably get. Maybe I think Purdue's probably going to be in a holding pattern here. And to get into the season, I'm sure there's some guys visiting. You want to keep wiggle room to add transfers. And I'll say this too, Alan, I think in the next, well, before the month is over, I think you could see a little bit more attrition from the Purdue roster. And just keep that on your radar. Do nothing significant, I think. But maybe you may see one or two guys leave the team as well. So as you know, you got a roster that big, that many moving parts. There's always stuff happening, guys coming and going, right?
Yeah, no doubt. That is the name of the game. Is change is the new constant. We say it every week, and it is the reality of it all. All right, we will put an end to this Saturday simulcast, and we'll look forward to talking more as we get closer to the start of the season. We'll be really actually looking forward to talking about watching guys throw footballs and catch them and tackle. That will be a good thing as well. Camp begins August 2nd, as you mentioned, I believe, as well. And of course, Purdue will be opening against Penn State September 1st, and the Nittany Lions come to Ross-Ade Stadium as well. So Tom, have a great rest of your weekend. Thank the Union Club Hotel for its sponsorship, and 811 Bistro, Boiler Up Bar, all the places you can visit when you're down on campus. So we appreciate them as well. So have a great weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing and talking more in our next Saturday simulcast for next week.